Oh, g'day, Stu from UAVfutures. This is like the third time I'm about to say that. Anyway, g'day, Stu from UAVfutures. Fourth. Today, we're going to be building this bad boy right here. Now, this is the Atom V2 from Raider X, and I absolutely love this quad. And one of the other things that I really like about this is, well, there's a ton of things, but one of the awesome things about this is you can build this bad boy in less than 20 minutes. So from the DIY kit, when you get it to when it's ready to go, it takes less than 20 minutes to get this thing ready. So I've got a little video somewhere down in the corner. I don't know which corner it's going to be in, but that is pretty much just a straight recording of me building this thing, and I also timed it just so I could check, and I think it took me like 18 or 19 minutes, but it is really easy to build. So if you're after a fantastic racer, and this is it, and you're also wanting something that's fairly easy to build, definitely check out this bad boy. Anyway, enough rambling from me. I'm sure that video is probably finished and you're just waiting. Let's get started. Oh, and I should probably mention, you're not really going to need much besides maybe some wire cutters and a soldering iron and just some little hex or Allen keys. That's it. Alrighty, so let's have a look at everything we need to build our Atom V2. Now, this might be a little bit different to what you have depending on if you went for the Pro build or for the Junior build. And the only difference is going to be the Pro is running some 1306 motors with these sort of larger style 30-40 props just here, and they have clockwise and counterclockwise threads on some of the motors. And the 1105s just here, they don't matter. It doesn't matter which direction they're spinning, and they're going to be running these smaller 30-25 props, the T-style props just here. But everything else is going to be the same. So, of course, you're going to need your frame and whatever color canopy you happen to be lucky enough to get. So whatever color canopy that you choose. You're going to need, you've got two options for your antennas. So you can either use the TBS Triumph or the Whip antenna. And if you're using the Triumph, you need to also make sure we're going to be putting on our pigtail right here. We've got a FPV camera and the FPV camera mount of your choice, because you've got a couple of different angles you can choose from. Just here we've got our TBS power cube right here that's specially designed for the Atom. That is super easy to set up, and we're going to be putting that on this little sort of mounting bracket just here. And the last thing we're going to need is a receiver of your choice. So whatever receiver you're going to use, if you're getting the DIY kit, you need to put in your own receiver. And I think if you're getting the ready to fly, you don't need to worry about this step because it comes with a D4R2 anyway. And of course a Velcro strap. Anyway, let's get started with the build. Alright, now this is a super easy build, and it should only take about 20 minutes from start to finish, so you're ready to fly. I'm going to be building with the Pro kit just here, so I'm going to be using the 1306 motors, but it would be exactly the same if you were building with the 1105 motors just here. The process will be identical, you just have different size motors. Anyway, let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to be working on is attaching our power cube just here to this little plate and putting it on our frame. Alright, now the first choice you have to make just before you start building is what sort of antenna are you going to run? Are you going to be running the lighter Whip antenna, which probably doesn't give as good a coverage but is a lot lighter than the TBS Triumph antenna just here? Regardless of what one you choose, what you do need to do is connect it to this little port just here on your VTX. So that's the underside of your power cube right here, and all I'm going to do, I'm going to be choosing the Whip antenna, but the process is exactly the same if you want to use the pigtail for the Triumph. Actually, I'll show you the Triumph just here. What you need to do, you're going to click that on just here, and that simply is going to be where you would screw your antenna onto in the end of the build. But for me, what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be running the Whip just because it's so much lighter. But feel free to choose whichever one you want. And because this is such an easy build, if you don't like one way, you can always switch it out and try the other. So I'm just going to clip that on just here, and it will make a little sort of locking noise. You'll hear it snap into place. Now this step is actually pretty crucial that we get right, because this could be a little bit confusing. But essentially we've got 4 screws right here, and 2 of these are the positive rails. So these ones right here are positive all the way through, and these ones here are negative. Now what we need to do, we're going to be securing this to our frame, and we only want the negatives to be secured to our frame. So in order to put this on here and stop any shorts, what we need to do, we're going to put this little plate over the top, and you notice these bolts here, these little holes are recessed. They're actually for the positives, so we're going to put the positives there. That's the front right and the back left, so we're going to screw that in. Alrighty, and then when this actually connects to our frame, we're going to have our negative rails are what it's going to, so that's going to be this one here and this one, that's what's going to be screwed into our frame. So I'm going to put that over, and what that looks like, so when it's up here, we can screw that in, the 2 holes that were left, so that is the front left and the back right, that is what we're going to actually use to secure it to our frame. Alrighty, so there it is. So the front left and the back right are the ones you use to secure it to the frame with. Alrighty, so now that that's on there, it's time to put on our motors. So if you're using the 1105s, just don't worry what I'm about to say, because that's going to be fine with these tiny little ones. But if you're using the 1306s, these clockwise threaded ones just here, they're the ones with the dot on the top. They're going to be going on motors 1 and 4. And the other motors, they're going to be going on motors 2 and 3. So that's what it's going to look like, and you can tell that just by the dot on the top right there. Anyway, let's get on with the build. Now when you first get your motors, I've got one of the 1306s out here fresh from the packet. You will notice it is actually a little bit too long to solder up to your power cube. So what I recommend people do is actually we need to cut these wires and pre-tin them. Now the length we actually want to cut our motor wires just here, I recommend about 45 millimeters. So if you that's how far the span is they need to go to the ESC. So you can see we're not really cutting off very much at all. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that off just there at 45 millimeters. If you're feeling a little bit conservative, feel free to leave yourself a little bit of room, but I find 45 millimeters is a good length of wire from the base of the motor to where the wire ends. And then once you've done that, what we need to actually do is strip the end of the wire and pre-tin it, and this is going to make it very easy to mounting to our ESCs. So all you have to do is with your little wire cutters just here, well, I guess you could use your fingernails as well if you were really desperate. You're just going to strip back a little bit of that silicone wire, and now we're going to pre-tin it up. Alright, now I'm using a little bit of glue tack. That's what this blue part is just here. That's just to hold the wires in place, but feel free to use some helping hands or anything that you'd like to use. But all we have to do is heat up the ends of the wires and apply a little bit of solder. There we go, that's how easy it is. Alright, so now we've pre-tinned our motors and we've got our power cube secure. What we're going to do, we're going to get our power cube ready for attaching our pre-tinned wires just here. So all I'm going to do, I'm going to put this on its side, and you will notice there is a whole bunch of little pads in here, these sort of little cutout sections. We're going to put a bit of we're going to pre-tin them with a little bit of solder, and that's going to make it very easy for our motors to join up, because this is actually where our ESCs are. So that's what we're going to do right now. Now I'm going to use a pair of helping hands to help me hold this in place, but if you don't have some helping hands, feel free to just sit this between two books or something like that to hold it in place. Alright, and now I'm going to go and add just a tiny bit of solder to each one of these 6 sort of ports just here on the back. And I'm also going to do the same to the front. There we go, nice and shiny. Alrighty, now to make our job of soldering up our wires a bit easier, what we need to do, we're going to screw our motors into place. So remember, the ones with the dots, these are the clockwise motors, and they're going to be going on ESCs 1, or arms I guess, or motor directions 1 and 4, and the ones without the dots are going to be going on motors 2 and 3. So we're going to screw those in right now, and make sure that the ESC wires are running down the arms, or the motor wires are running down the arms, sorry. And a good little tip too, once you're happy with how your motors are, put a little bit of Loctite on the end of them, because that's going to stop the screws coming loose with any vibrations. Now I've just used 2 screws in just here, but feel free to use 3 or 4. So 4 I think would definitely be overkill. 3 is probably playing it safe, but I think you're totally fine with just 2 screws in my opinion anyway. Alrighty, so now that's done, we're probably up to our most complex part of the build, and that is actually soldering our ESCs. I'm so used to saying that. Soldering our motors straight up here to our ESCs. So just using your helping hands like before, I'm just going to put them just like that so they're nice and clamped. What we need to do, we're going to solder up our motors directly to our ESCs. Now, depending on which way we solder these up will actually determine the direction that our motors spin. So we want motors 1 and 4, they're the ones with the dots just here, or the back right and the front left. We want those to spin clockwise, and the other 2 motors, motors 2 and motors 3, we want those to spin counterclockwise. And we can actually change that direction 2 different ways. So either we can solder them up with a wire cross, so 2 of these wires crossed, and we'll talk about that a little bit in detail here, and that's what I'm going to do. Or you can change it in the BL Heli software, so you can simply plug in a USB and use a computer program to change the direction. But to keep things simple, what we're going to do today, we're going to be doing it by just hardwiring it. So we're going to be wiring it a different way, and that's going to tell our ESCs and our motors which way we want it to rotate. Alrighty, so for motors 1 just here, in order to make that spin clockwise, what we need to do, we're just going to solder that straight across. And what that means is, this is the, I guess you would call, none of these wires are going to be crossing each other. So this first wire here is going to be going, I guess, to this little pad just here, this little port where we soldered it before. The middle wire is going to go to the middle pad, and the third wire is going to go to the third pad, or the one closest to the outside. Alright, so let's get that started here, and hopefully this is going to be in shot, but it might be a little bit difficult to see. But because we've pre-tinned them, they're going to solder up very, very easily. Alrighty, so here's my first wire just here, and that's going to be going to this first little tab. You might need to use a little pair of pliers as well, depending if you've got how big your hands are. Alright, so there's ESC wire 1. Alright, this is the middle wire from the motor, so I'm going to put that to the middle wire of the ESC pad. There's 2. And then this is the third wire, so the one closest to the outside, and I'm going to solder that to the little pad closest to the outside on the ESC. There we go, so there's one motor done. That's motor 1 done. Now this one actually here, this is motor 2 is this one just here, and that's going to go the same direction as motor 3, which is the one I'm currently working on. We want that actually to spin in a counterclockwise direction, so we actually need to cross over 2 of these wires. And all you have to do, I'm going to take this outside motor here, I guess, or the one that's on the inside, I'm going to solder that directly to the middle pad. And I'm going to take the middle wire and I'm going to solder that to the inside pad. So now 2 of those wires are going to be crossed over. And then I'm going to leave the third wire, so the one on the outside, just going straight across. There we go, just like that. So that's how to do one that goes clockwise and a motor that goes counterclockwise. So the counterclockwise motors, you just have 2 of the wires crossing over. Alright, let's do the front 2. Alright, so this is, I know it's a little bit confusing from the front here, but this is actually motor 2, and I'll show you a shot that'll make this a lot clearer. I'll show you a little image that we can put in that you guys can see. But this one needs to be crossed over as well. So I'm going to put the middle wire to the third little port just here. Oh, need tiny hands for this. Those 2 across, and then my third one, just hook wiring that up. Alrighty, and then we're going to do this one straight across. So the inside wire to the inside pad, the middle wire to the middle pad, and the outside wire to the outside pad of the ESC. Alright, so now I've got the inside wire just here going to the inside pad. Alrighty, so now all our motors are connected up to our ESCs, and you can notice here we've got some of our wires, but it's looking a little bit scrappy. What I suggest people do is just unscrew your motors for a minute now that they're in, and give your wires a little bit of a twist, and that is definitely going to tidy up your motor wires just there, and then screw it back in. And that's going to also allow it in the newer versions of the frame to be recessed into the little cutouts that it has. So I'm going to do that to each one of my motors, and then cut back to it. Alrighty, so you can see that's looking much neater with our wires twisted just here, and we're almost coming to the end of the build. What we need to do, we need to install our FPV camera, and that is super simple. So all you need to do, this little port just here, we just need to plug it into. So it is super simple. So, and if you're wondering, the yellow wire goes on the inside, but it's only going to go on one way anyway. It's only going to fit in one way, so you just slide that in there. Alrighty, and now what we need to do, we need to select what sort of angle we want to run. So in our little FPV mount just here, I've got mine right here. I've chosen the most severe angle that I could because I want the most amount of speed. But pretty much the steeper your angle is, the faster your quad is going to feel to fly, because the more tilt you have, the more your craft is going to be tilted forward, and there's going to be more thrust, I guess, pushing it along, so you're going to be going a little bit faster. So I've chosen a pretty severe one. When you install it into your FPV mount, just make sure that the wires are at the bottom, because you don't want your FPV camera up the wrong way. And then all we need to do, we just take these two longer screws that come in the little kit, and we just slide them up from the bottom up through the FPV mount. Now your FPV mount might be a little bit of a different color, because I'm pretty sure I've got a 3D printed one, but the ones that come with it are going to be injection molded. But nevertheless, the process is still the same. So there, that is our camera good to go. Alrighty, so now the FPV camera's in, the last thing we need to solder in, and this will be the last little thing we can do before we put the canopy on, we need to work on putting our receiver. So let's get started on that. So the most important thing when choosing a receiver, as well as making sure you choose one that talks to your radio, is thinking about its size. So I've got a D4R2 here, a Lemon satellite receiver, and I think that's an XSR. Anyway, the most important thing is you're not going to have too much space underneath this canopy right here to put a receiver in. So you need to make sure you can pick one that is going to fit, and what that might entail, like I'm going to choose this one here, this D4R2, but what that means is I'm going to have to actually de-pin it, so make it as small as possible. So you need to do that in order to make sure it will fit. So I'm going to open up my D4R2 and de-pin it, and then we'll cut back and move on. Alright, and while I'm pre-tinning, what I am going to do, just on here, I'm going to pre-tin, these are these three little pads. You can either plug it in if you have a little port, you can use this port at the front, but just behind it here on the board as well, you have your signal, ground, and, signal positive and ground just here. So that's where I'm going to direct solder mine. Alright, now I've just flipped mine upside down, so I'm going to be soldering in just here, but essentially what we need to do, where those pins you were going to use that you normally plug in your servo connector, what we need to do is actually just connect some little wires up. So all I'm going to do, I'm just going to put in my signal, ground, and voltage wires. So there's my signal wire. My voltage. And also my ground. Alrighty, so now what I'm going to do, I'm going to strip the ends and pre-tin those, and they'll be ready to solder up to our board just here. Alright, now I don't know how well you guys are going to see this, because essentially what I have to do is solder these in right here, and there's a little bit of limited space, so just bear with me. Putting in my signal wire. Signal. Next we've got our voltage. And then finally we've got our ground. Alrighty. And now would be a perfect time as well just to hit these little areas just with some hot glue. So those little joints that you've made just here, just hit them with some hot glue, because that'll stop them coming off in any crashes or hard vibrations that you have. Alrighty, and something I recommend doing is just putting a little piece of foam just under here, sort of to stop any vibrations on your flight controller and your receiver bouncing around. That's a really good little tip. Rightio, so that is looking fantastic, but just before we put the canopy on, just make sure that your receiver is bound. So definitely double check that, because it's going to be a pain once you put this on. You're going to have to take it off again if you haven't bound it, so make sure you've done that. Luckily this one's already bound, so I'm going to put the top down and we'll keep going. Alrighty, so now that's all done. What we need to do, and this might be the hardest choice for some of you, is choose what color canopy you're actually going to be rocking. Now I think I'm going to pick the black, and I know that you guys get another random color in there, but I'm going to go with the black. That's the one I'm going to be putting on. And just make sure that you're not squishing any wires when you're pushing it down, because that's the last thing you want to do, is pinch any wires in here. But this is all looking very, very good. Alrighty. And now we've just got to screw in our little bolts, so we can tighten up these two at the front and then put the last two little ones just here. Alrighty, now the last little thing we need to do to get this bad boy ready for flying is we need to put our props on. And you notice the props have a little R and the number 1, or they have no R after them. So this one's, well, they actually do have an R, which is a little bit confusing, but RX3040, and this has a little number 2 on it. That needs to go on motors 3, and let me have a look, 3 and 2. So, and the other motors that are spinning in the clockwise direction, they're called the RX3040R, and I just like to think of that as reverse, and they've got a little number 1 on them, so they need to go on these motors 1 and motors 4. Alrighty, and then the last thing we need to do, we need to actually screw these on. Now these have some, motors 1 and motors 4 have a reverse thread nut on them. So don't freak out if you can't get it to go on. You're probably using the wrong nut there. So let's just screw those on. And then the motors 2 and motors 3, they have the standard sort of thread, so we're going to put those on. Alrighty, so there it is. That is how easy it is to build an Atom V2. Now, what we're going to do next, because this comes in some various stages of the kits, I guess DIY or bind and fly or ready to fly, what I'm going to actually do, I'm going to show you each one of those processes. So we're going to go through and we're going to show you how to bind and put in the little receiver just here, and how to bind that actually up to your Tyrannus or whatever controller that you're going to use. And then we're going to plug it into the computer and make sure our flight modes are ready. So we're pretty much ready to go. All I have to do is flick a switch and we'll be airborne. Alright, so let's jump in and look at that now and have a look at how we would bind our radio. Alrighty, so now what we're going to actually do is on our Tyrannus make a model ready to bind our little Atom V2. So we're going to go through here, we're going to hold this down and we can click create model. And we're going to go across. Look, yes, I have lost my buttons on here, but we're going to be making a multi-rotor. And I think it's just page goes to the next one. So just pushing page a few times. There we go. Yes, hold long enter to confirm. There we go. All right, and I'm just going to change the name of this. Let's just call it A2 for Atom 2, because I know you guys don't want to watch me type in all the numbers and the letters right here. Alright, so now I'm going to show you how we go about binding it. So on the Tyrannus anyway, and this will be different depending on which radio you have, but you can see if you go here, there should be an option somewhere on there to click bind. So what we're going to do, we're going to click that, our Tyrannus will start beeping, and then we can move over, there we go, we can move over and work on our Atom. So I'm going to leave that beeping over here. Alrighty, so that's beeping away. I'm going to hold down this little button right here, that's going to allow for binding, and I'm going to plug it in. Ooh. I think there we go. So that looks like it might be successfully bound. Going to push exit right here and then unplug. Alright, and then now that I've unplugged, I can plug back in and we should be able to hear my radio make some beeps.
Telemetry recovered.
There we go. Alrighty, and you can't really see it in this light. I'll see if I can turn something out, but this tiny little LED just here is sort of flashing green. You can see this tiny little part just here. That's going to indicate a successful bind. Alright, so now it's very important to set a failsafe on our little quad so it doesn't fly away. So with your throttle at 0 and your radio turned on, we're just going to press this little button here. And that will set the failsafe. But always double check this, because the last thing you want is to be flying around, lose radio contact, and your quad just fly away. Really, we want it to stop doing what it's doing. And then once the props are off, the great thing to do is actually spin your motors up a little bit and then just totally turn off your radio and see what happens. And what you want to happen is the motors to completely stop spinning. Rightio, now that our quad is bound, there's one more thing we're going to do setting up on our radio on our Tyrannus, and that is to make a little arm switch, so we can flick one of these switches that's going to arm the quad, and then we'll plug it into the computer and have a look at how it's set up. Alright, so on your, you can see I'm still on A2 for our Atom 2. I'm going to go through and you will find, I think it's called Mixer. Go down to Mixer and we want channel 5. We're going to put something in here. Let's just put a little A for arm. And we're going to go down, there we go, thank you very much, exit that. We're going to go down and we're going to change its source. So that is pretty much the switch you want to hit when you're going to arm. So I'm going to put that over here. So what's that? That's SG, and then I'm going to push confirm that, and I can exit. That is all we need to do to set up our model right here, ready for arming and flying. There's lots of other things you can do in here, but these are pretty much the essentials that I recommend. So binding, setting up the failsafe, and then also setting up a little 5th channel just here, an auxiliary switch that we can use to arm our quads. If you want to put in a 6th switch, you could also do that. You could use that for maybe changing modes. If you want to go in horizon mode or angle mode or any of those sort of doodads just there, you could also do that. Luckily, I just fly in acro, so all I really need is an arm switch. But let's head over to the computer and have a look what we can do next. Alrighty, now you're going to have to bear with me here. That's my dog Charlie on the screen, but I don't have a computer that can really handle things very well, so it's hard to screen capture, so I'm just going to film it. But essentially what I'm doing, I'm going to plug in my little Atom V2 right here into the USB port. Alright, and that's just using a micro USB, and then I'm going to open up Cleanflight, and I'll leave a link to Cleanflight in the description below anyway. Alrighty, and we're going to hit connect. And now we're connected to our flight control, and we've got a whole bunch of options. Pretty much the most important ones that we need to do here. If you need to test your motors, you can go down to this tab, and that's to check that you have them spinning in the correct direction. Alrighty, and what we're going to go to, we're going to go over here to the receiver tab, and then I'm just going to plug my quad in right here.
Telemetry recovered.
Alrighty, so you can see here some of our values are moving, and if I move my, this is on my Tyrannus, I'm moving some things around, you can see that a couple of our values are changing. Now I've just inserted this little freeze frame here because this is important to note. So depending on what radio you're using, you might need to change your channel mapping, but it's super easy because you can just select that from this little tab right here. Now I did set up one switch right here, and that was the 5th one that we select for our arm switch, and you can see that's on auxiliary 1. So what I'm going to do, that lets me know that auxiliary 1 right here, we can turn that on as our arm switch. So we're going to go over to modes, we're going to put add a range for our arm, auxiliary 1, and we want it to be all the way up here. So when my motors, you can see that little thing moving down the bottom just here. When that comes up into here, that is going to be armed. So I'm going to click save right there. And that is pretty much it for adding modes. So now whenever we flick that switch, our little Atom should arm. So there it is, there's my build guide for the DIY kit for the Atom V2, and a little bit about binding it as well and setting up a model and some of those things in Cleanflight. Anyway, hopefully that helps some of you guys out there, and if you're definitely thinking about building a racer and you want a really high performance quad but you're a little bit worried about building, this is definitely the one for you because it is so easy. It's brilliant, I absolutely love it. Anyway, subscribe for more FPV related content. I'm going to leave you guys with some flight footage of this thing zipping around, and as always, happy flying!